I was completely taken aback, my voice betraying the shock and rising anxiety I felt as I clutched the phone tightly. "What do you mean there's been a cancellation?" I asked, unable to hide the confusion and dread that crept into my tone. The words echoed louder than I intended, drawing the curious glances of my coworkers in the lunchroom. Realizing my mistake, I quickly lowered my voice, but the questions raced through my mind at full speed. I hadn't authorized any cancellations, so how was this happening? My thoughts swirled, leaving me feeling momentarily paralyzed. On the other end of the line, the woman from the insurance company responded with calm professionalism, her voice steady, a sharp contrast to the turmoil I felt. "According to our records, we received a cancellation request from you, and the procedure has already been completed," she explained, her tone measured and deliberate. I blinked, trying to process her words. Cancellation? I had never made such a request. My mind raced back to the moment I'd reluctantly signed up for the savings-based life insurance policy. It had been Alice, my sister-in-law and an insurance agent, who had convinced me to enroll. Her pitch was persuasive, but the underlying pressure to help her meet her sales quotas had ultimately sealed the deal. The policy was expensive, much more than others I could have chosen, but I had given in, hoping to keep peace within the family. Now it felt like that decision was coming back to haunt me. "My name is Betty. I'm a 42-year-old office worker living in a modest apartment with my husband Henry and our 7-year-old daughter Linda. Life, as of late, has felt like a relentless series of challenges, and today was no exception." The chaos began early in the morning, just as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the curtains. Henry, my husband of nearly a decade, announced an unexpected overnight business trip as soon as he rolled out of bed. His declaration sent the household into a flurry of activity as he scrambled to pack his bags. Meanwhile, Linda, who was just starting first grade, was in tears because she couldn't find her math textbook. "I can't go to school without it," she wailed, her small face flushed with panic. Amid all this, I couldn't help but wish Henry would handle his own preparations instead of constantly asking me where his travel bag was or whether I'd seen his new socks. It felt like I was juggling two children rather than a husband and daughter. "Why didn't you prepare last night?" I snapped, unable to hide my irritation. Linda, ever earnest, quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, Mom, I'll be more careful next time." Her sincerity softened me instantly. "It's okay," I said, taking a deep breath to calm myself. "I should have checked with you yesterday. That was my mistake." But Henry was another matter. As Linda scurried off to keep looking for her textbook, Henry muttered something about needing new socks for his trip. "I had no idea you were going on a business trip," I replied sharply. "Aren't the socks I washed and put away good enough? Or is this just another excuse for not being prepared?" His insistence on new socks irritated me. If he needed them so badly, he could have purchased them himself or at least informed me ahead of time. His business trips, while rare, were clearly planned in advance, though he never seemed to think I needed to know about them until the last minute. Linda's tearful plea brought the argument to a halt. "Daddy, Mommy, please stop fighting," she begged, her voice trembling. My heart broke as I turned to her. "I'm sorry, Linda, let's find your textbook together," I said, pushing aside my frustration for her sake. As I helped her search through her backpack, my gaze flickered to Henry, who was now folding casual clothes, items more suited for a leisurely weekend than a professional trip. Suspicion began to creep in, a nagging voice in the back of my mind whispering doubts I didn't want to entertain. Could he be having another affair? It wouldn't be the first time. The memories of his past betrayals resurfaced, sharp and unwelcome. The first affair had come to light just before Linda was born, shattering my trust in him. I had been on the verge of filing for divorce when his family intervened, begging me to give him another chance. His mother and sister had pleaded with me, their voices thick with emotion, convincing me that Henry would change. He didn't. The second affair happened last year, this time with someone he'd met on a dating app. His excuses were flimsy, his apologies a repetition of the same script he'd used before. I had warned him, one more mistake, and there would be no discussions, no second chances. He had signed preliminary divorce papers and transferred our savings to my account as part of that agreement. Despite my outward forgiveness, my love for him had long since evaporated. I stayed only for Linda, hoping to provide her with some semblance of stability. But as I watched him pack that morning, my patience wore thin. Thankfully, we found Linda's math textbook, and she left for school with a smile, her earlier tears forgotten. The quiet that settled over the apartment after her departure felt almost oppressive. Skipping my usual routine of packing a lunch, I decided to grab something from the shop near my office during my break. It was there, standing in line, that I noticed the advertisement for the insurance company. The timing felt almost ironic. I had been looking forward to the bonus payment that came with my policy, something Alice had touted as a key benefit when she'd sold it to me. The thought of using that bonus to buy new autumn clothes for Linda had been a small but comforting plan amidst all the chaos. Now, as the woman on the phone explained the cancellation, my stomach churned with unease. This wasn't just about losing a policy, it was about trust in my husband, trust in his family, and trust in the decisions I'd made to keep our lives together. I just wanted to have fun for once, Henry said dismissively, his tone betraying how little he thought of the situation. To him, it was just another moment he could shrug off. It's no big deal, we're on a family trip, and everyone's happy. His words stung. That family includes your parents and Alice, right? I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. Why aren't Linda and I part of that family? Don't we count? Insurance is meant for emergencies, Henry, not for your little getaways. Don't you think you should have discussed this with me first? Or did you not bother because you knew I'd say no? Henry sighed, rolling his eyes as if I were the one being unreasonable. You and Linda are always together, he said, his tone edged with irritation. It's fine for me to spend time with my real family once in a while. Besides, Alice was already planning to sign you up for a new life insurance policy. So, it's not like we're losing anything. This is a win-win. I could hardly believe my ears. My voice rose, cutting through his dismissiveness. I can't believe you're not embarrassed to say that out loud. You sound like a child who's sneaking around because he knows he'll get in trouble. That's exactly why you didn't tell me, because you knew I'd be upset, and you thought lying about it would make it easier? If you're going to keep nagging me about this, maybe I should just get a divorce, Henry shot back, his voice unusually firm. Whether it was the boldness of being away on a trip or the lack of accountability he'd always felt around his family, his words struck with an air of finality. Understood, I said sharply, my voice cold as ice before I ended the call. I sat there for a moment, staring at the phone in my hand. My hands trembled with anger, frustration, and, most of all, a sense of clarity. That's it, I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. Enough is enough. Henry and his family need to face the consequences of their actions. I had always tried to believe the best about my in-laws, even after everything they'd done. I'd thought Alice's push to sign me up for an expensive life insurance policy was misguided but not malicious. I wanted to believe they were decent people at heart, but decent people don't secretly cancel a daughter-in-law's policy to fund personal luxuries. Decent people don't enable or encourage their son's selfishness at the expense of his wife and daughter. Like husband, like family, I thought bitterly, I was done with all of them. The divorce papers Henry had signed after his last affair were still in my possession, tucked away like a painful memory I never wanted to revisit. But now, they felt like a lifeline, a way out. I grabbed them, the pages crisp and almost weighty in my hands. Without hesitation, I marched straight to my lawyer's office and filed for divorce. That evening, I picked Linda up from after-school care. As we drove home, I gently explained what had happened, careful not to overwhelm her. Her initial surprise softened as I reassured her, emphasizing that I was making this decision for both of us. When we arrived home, she turned to me with wide, questioning eyes. So Daddy isn't coming home anymore? I hesitated, then answered as gently as I could, not tonight, sweetheart, he's staying somewhere else. We're getting divorced, which means we'll be living apart from now on. Linda was quiet for a moment before she suddenly said, then let's start cleaning up now, quickly. Her urgency caught me off guard. What's the rush? I asked, unsure of her reasoning. She looked up at me, her small face filled with determination. We're separated from Dad now, right? That means you don't have to cry anymore. I hate it when Dad makes you upset. My breath caught in my throat. Sweetheart, did you always know when we were fighting? Yes, she admitted, and I hated it. You only told us to stop arguing because you were worried I'd feel sad, but I hated how he made you feel even more. I felt a lump rise in my throat, but I swallowed it down. I'm so sorry, Linda. I didn't want to put you through any of that. Daddy never plays with me, even when he's home, she continued, her voice small but resolute. When I talk to him, he says, be quiet, go away. Like this morning, He only uses me to say mean things to you. I've been so sad, Mom." Her eyes welled up with tears, but she smiled bravely. "I love you, Mom." I knelt down and pulled her into a hug. "I love you too," I whispered, my voice cracking. "From now on, it's just the two of us, and I promise to take care of you and make you happy." Linda's smile widened. "Yay!" she exclaimed, her joy lighting up the room. That night, while Linda worked on her homework, I threw myself into action. I contacted my lawyer, started researching real estate agents, and called my parents to explain everything. Their response was immediate and supportive. "Come back home right away," my father said firmly. "This way, Linda won't have to change schools." He even offered to borrow a truck to help us move. The next morning, I informed the landlord, Linda's school, and the families in her commuting group about our plans to relocate. I kept the details brief, focusing on what they needed to know. By the time Henry returned the following day, my parents and I had already packed and moved most of our belongings to their house. I left Henry's things untouched in the apartment, along with a simple note. "We are divorced. We are strangers now." As I walked out of that apartment for the last time, a sense of relief washed over me. I could only imagine Henry's shock when he saw the empty home, but I didn't care anymore. This time, I was prepared. After his last betrayal, I'd warned him, one more misstep, and there would be no discussion. We had already agreed that I would keep custody of Linda and all marital assets. And now, with Linda by my side and the support of my parents, I could finally begin a new chapter, a chapter filled with hope, peace, and the promise of a brighter future.